Parashat Shemini opens in a blaze of hope and promise. The Mishkan, the portable sanctuary where the divine presence will dwell among the people, is complete. After months of precise instructions and communal labor, the Israelites stand at the edge of something sacred. They have waited, they have prepared, and now this moment has arrived. Fire descends from heaven, consuming the offerings, and the people rejoice. They sang out and fell on their faces. Leviticus 9:24. But the holy joy is interrupted by unimaginable grief. Without warning, Nadav and Avihu, Aaron's sons, and the newly inaugurated priest step forward and offer what the Torah calls a zarah, a strange fire that God had not commanded. And again, fire goes forth from before God, but this time, it's not a sign of divine acceptance. It's a consuming fire. Vayamutu, lifnei, Adonai. They died before God. Leviticus 10:2. We are left with this terse, aching line. Vayaronu, Aharon, and Aaron was silent. Leviticus 10:3. Not only did Aaron lose two sons, he lost them at the very foot of the altar. In service to the Holy One, the silence is deafening. As a child, this story terrified me. As a trans person and a father, it still does. That God who dwells in the Mishkan seems here to punish rather than embrace. The divine presence, often associated with intimacy, is suddenly a force of annihilation. It is a chilling scene, one that feels less like holy awe and more like fear-driven orthodoxy. Over the centuries, our sages have offered many explanations for what Nadav and Avihu did wrong. The Midrash, Vayikra Rabbah 29, suggests they were arrogant, saying, "When will those old men die so we can take over?" Others in the Talmud say they brought an offering while drunk, based on the subsequent commandment to abstain from wine while serving, Leviticus 10:9. Rashi, drawing from these traditions, proposes they acted without permission, issuing halakha in presence of their teacher, Moses. The Zohar, Chemot 57b, imagines their souls were overwhelmed by divine ecstasy and kissed out of the world. However, despite all of this commentary, none of it feels entirely satisfying. None of it seems to justify death by fire. Two young men bring an offering, not commanded, but not strictly speaking, forbidden either, and they die. What kind of God kills over ritual deviation? And yet, the story continues to speak, because while I am not a priest at the sanctuary altar, I have known what it's like to be told my fire, my expression, my offering is strange. I have known what it's like to approach the sacred with passion and dedication, only to be punished for doing so. As a trans person, I have brought my truth to family, to faith, communities, to tradition itself, and been met at times not with acceptance, but with silence, or worse, with condemnation. I have been told my identity is a rebellion, my life is a threat to the divine order, and I have been so far from alone. The fire that consumed Nadav and Avihu is not just a biblical episode. It's burned still. It's the fire of rejection, of systematic violence, of exclusion, dressed up as theology. It lives in homes where queer and trans children are exiled. It grows in the pulpits where preachers claim that God demands conformity at the expense of truth. It rages in laws that seek to ease trans lives under the guise of religious and moral clarity. Erasing trans lives is not moral clarity. And yet, I believe our tradition has more to say. Yes, Shemini contains a painful story, but our Torah is not frozen. It breathes, it argues, it evolves. Can I say that here? And even with Shemini, we can find a hint of something else, something holy. The Talmud, Yoma 53a, notes that from fire from heaven was meant to consume the sacrifices, but the priests were still obligated to bring earthly fire. The heavenly and the human must work in tandem. The fire, what we bring, matters. Its origin, its intention, its spirit. These are not incidental. They shape how the divine responds. And so, if fire without relationship leads to destruction, then fire born of love, humility, and covenant may yet be welcomed. Consider fire, another fire, the Eish Tamid, the eternal flame at the altar, Leviticus 6:6. It must never go out. A fire of devotion, of sacred service, of human longing. That fire, when tended with care, sustains the whole system. It is not to be feared, it is to be nurtured. And in that spirit, I find myself thinking about another moment of sacred fire misuse. The fictional but potent scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the Nazis open the Ark and use it as a weapon, or try to at least. The fire emerges and it consumes them, as if the Ark refused to be wielded for domination. It is modern Midrash, where holiness is used to control rather than connect. It becomes a danger when divine power is co-opted to justify hate. It turns on those who abuse it. The problem in both Raiders and Shemini is not the fire, it's the posture. Nadav and Avihu, like the villains in the movie, brought their offerings without consent, without relationship, or at least that's how it appears. And in doing so, they turned sacred fire into a solitary act of spiritual self-importance. But what if we reframed the question? What if the tragedy of Nadav and Avihu is not only about divine punishment at all, but about the cost of approaching holiness without support, without safety, without a net of community trust? Perhaps they were passionate, yes, but isolated. Sincere, but naive to the institutional weight around them. And that too speaks of our experience. So many queer and trans people approach tradition with fire in their hearts and find themselves alone before the altar. I remember when I came out, my family didn't kill me. I'm here, but some cut me out. No more invitations. My photo was removed from some walls. Letters arrived not to embrace, but to warn. They claimed to speak for God, and for a time I wondered if maybe they did. But then I turned the page of Torah. I listened again, and I heard a different voice. I heard the Shekinah, the divine feminine presence who walks with us in exile and grief. I saw the God who stands with Hagar in the wilderness, who calls each of us by name. I remembered that Abraham argued with God, and God listened. And Moses stood in the breach after the golden calf, and God relented. And Elijah heard not the fire, but the still small voice. And I realized that if God can change, so can we. Today, I raise children of my own. I teach them to bring their fire, to offer what is true for them, not to cower before inherited expectations, but to engage traditions with curiosity, love, and holy defiance. The fire I carry is not zarah. It is necessary. And the fire of survival, it is the fire of survival, of dignity, of prayer that refuses silence. The fire that powers trans elders, queer prophets, and children who dare to name themselves fully. The fire that lights our Shabbat candles and the candles we hold at vigils for those lost. The fire of Torah studied at midnight and the voices raised at pride. So when we ask, how can I still believe God after all of this? After rejection, exile, silence, I answer. Because I don't believe in God who demands sacrifice to prove our worth. I believe in a God who invites us to bring our full selves. A God who walks beside us in the wilderness, who meets us at the altar and whispers, not obey, but belong. May we bring our fire without fear. May we build sanctuaries that honor every offering. And may we teach the next generation that no sacrifice is needed, only love.